Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our really incredible panel today on Transgender Day of Visibility, Let Them Play, where we are going to speak to a stellar panel of out TGI sports individuals. To get us started today, we have the incredible and always supportive of the TGI community, the mayor of West Hollywood, Mayor Lindsay Horvath. Thank you so much, everyone. Please, a big round of applause for our wonderful mayor.
Oh, you're so sweet. Hi, Drian. Hi, everyone. Happy Transgender Visibility Day. Why is it only one day? It should be every day of the year. And I saw a meme on Instagram today that said that visibility can cut both ways because becoming visible means risking telling your story and living in your truth. And so we need this day as a reminder that every day must be Transgender Visibility Day, and we must stand in solidarity with our trans family to make sure visibility exists every day, and that every day is not the struggle that it currently is today, that we are all standing in support and learning from our trans families so we can be in solidarity and in community with one another. And I'm just so excited to hear from our panelists. All badass athletes, and they just remind me how much I have not been working out during COVID, I have to say. But I am so excited to hear from all of you about your experience. Thank you for living out your truth and for sharing your truth here with us today in community. West Hollywood loves you. We welcome you. We embrace you. And we thank you for sharing today. And now I'm going to turn it to Mayor Pro Tem Lauren Meister.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, panelists, for being here, and to our staff for putting this together. I just want to say how excited I am that we finally have a president back in office who issued the first presidential proclamation recognizing Transgender Day of Visibility. How refreshing is that? I mean, I think that deserves a little round of applause as well. We're just happy to be here with you. We're happy to support you. And again, thank you for everything that you do and for being here. And now I'm going to turn this over to Councilmember Seppi Shine.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Meister. First, I want to say happy Transgender Day of Visibility to all of our transgender and non-binary siblings. I am so thankful for the Transgender Advisory Board for putting this together and staff. And thank you to all the amazing panelists and moderator Drian for having this important event. I just want to tell you that as your sister, I see you, I hear you. West Hollywood, I want to second Mayor's expression that we love you, we want you, you are safe, and we will continue to advocate for you feeling safe and being safe in our city, and that you're wanted always in West Hollywood. And I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you so much, Seppi. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so great for you to be here. Thank you to all of our amazing panelists. I'm in awe in each of every one of you. Drian, you know, as the Gen Zers say, we stan. You know, we just adore all that you all are doing to the city. This panel is one that's so near and dear to my heart. I was the first openly out gay athlete at my college when I played sports. And so visibility for all of our siblings in all that we do is so critical. And West Hollywood sees you, I see you, I love you, I stand with you. Happy Transgender Visibility Day. West Hollywood will always be there on the front lines to fight with and for each and every one of you. Have an amazing panel.
All right, and with that, we will get started on our panel. So I would just like to remind everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to have a very insightful and thoughtful discussion. So if things come up for you, please feel free to put them in the chat. This is a safe space to ask questions and to learn. We're all here to learn together. And so I would like to take this time to introduce you to our amazing panelists. First, I would like to introduce you to Patricio Manuel, who is an American professional boxer. Thank you so much, Patricio, for being here with us. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate City of West Hollywood for inviting me onto this panel. I was just joking with Fallon, we're the two fighters, and I think this is the first time that we've ever been brought together in a space. So really thankful to be sharing space with everyone on this panel. Really quick introduction. My name is Patricio Manuel. My boxing nickname is Cacahuate, which for those who don't speak Spanish means peanut. I got this name because my head is so small. I'm actually under a size 7 hat. I currently reside in what was formerly Tongva land, is still in spirit Tongva land, specifically in the northeastern part of Los Angeles County in Duarte, California.
Thank you, Patricio, and thank you for mentioning what land we are on. I think that's so important. Next, we have the wonderful Fallon Fox, who is a retired MMA fighter and who recently became Outsports Pioneer Triumph Award recipient. So congratulations, Fallon. Would you like to introduce yourself to the group today? Oh, I think you may be muted.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Fallon Fox, and it's good to be here on this Transgender Day of Visibility. My fight name was the Queen of Swords, and I got that name from a tarot card, which means a strong and powerful woman. And I currently live in California. I was a jiu-jitsu fighter and a submission fighting specialist for about, 3 or 4 years before I became an MMA fighter. And I fought in amateur, 3 amateur bouts in stealth, and also professional bouts. I had 6 professional bouts to my name. So, and I'm just very glad to be here on this Transgender Day of Visibility.
Thank you so much, Fallon. Thank you for being with us today. And last but not least, we have community member and local celebrity, Angela Cristowal, who is a volleyball player. Angela, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Yes, thank you, Drian. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Angela Cristowal. I've been playing volleyball not professionally, not yet, at least not yet, but for about more than 10 years now. I started playing when I was a junior in high school, and it's been a passion of mine. It's been a way for me to just, de-stress and just get away from everything that's happening. So thank you so much for having us here. And yeah, goodbye.
Thank you, Angela. And so I just want to reiterate for people, please put your questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to ask staff, either Hernan or Dee, if y'all can read questions as they come up or notify us, that would be greatly appreciated. I thought, one way that we could start our discussion is to talk about what does sports mean to you? Why did you get into sports? Why is this such an important part of your life? What has sports meant in your life? Who would like to start for us? Fallon, I see that you're ready to go. Would you like to answer that question?
Sure. What sports means to me? Sports means to me is empowerment for me. I feel very empowered as a professional athlete and MMA fighter, and to be able to do the same things as cisgender women do, very empowering, and also keeps me in shape, helps me keep looking good, and those are the main points, I suppose, of what it means to me.
Thank you, Fallon. Patricio, Angela, same question. Patricio, you want to go? You seem you're muted.
Sorry, it's been a year into the pandemic, and I'm still not able to click on muting myself. Just there's so much information about like what is sports to people. We know that it's something that it goes beyond just a pastime, right? This is literally a vehicle of transformation and discovery for a lot of people. And I think that's what's been about my story in particular. And I think I can't speak for other trans athletes, but I know the ones I've had discussions with, it has also been that place of really discovering yourself. And for me, I've been involved in boxing for 20 years. This is a love story for me. This started back in December 31st, 2001. My grandma, shout out to my grandma, who I think is watching this right now. I love you and I will see you Sunday. My grandma for Christmas brought me down to what is now closed LA Boxing Club. And it was that first week I knew I had found the thing, just whatever it was that I needed to feel like myself. At that point, I was 16 years old. I had completely disassociated really from my own body. I felt like I was watching myself go through the motions. And in that first week of boxing, I suddenly was rammed right back into my body and I suddenly became proud of it. It wasn't something that I cringed at or wanted to hide from. It was something that I began to celebrate. For me, this has been not only about the love of the sport, but particularly a love for myself. It has been through boxing that I discovered who I was. It was through boxing that I also gained the discipline I needed to proclaim, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and no one's going to stop me. I think if we try to separate trans people from sport, we're removing humanity from the sport. And that is what is so amazing, especially I'm biased with boxing, but especially a sport like boxing that has so many stories that are linked to so many civil rights and struggles within our society. To suddenly remove an entire group of people from it is doing a disservice to the sport and everyone involved in it.
Thank you. Absolutely. Sports should be an event that brings us together. That's what the Olympics were about, bringing us together to find commonality, to, build strength and power together. And these bills are absolutely against all of that. Angela, same question. I think you answered a little bit in the beginning, but I wonder if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think sports for me was also a form of like an escape, right? It was a way for me to challenge myself to be ultimately the best version of myself against other players, right? It's a competitive sport. I play volleyball, sixes, doubles, but it's kind of like you're your own worst critic, right? Or you're your own, like your best supporter. So the hours that you put into this, right? The hours that you spend in the gym, right? Running repetitive practices or doing the same thing over and over again just to, be the best version is what has helped me in like my everyday life also. It's taught me discipline. I've built really great relationships with people within playing volleyball and who have also been really supportive. So that's what volleyball or sports means to me. Building community, connecting with other folks, and ultimately challenging yourself to be the best version of yourself as possible.
Thank you. Awesome. Yes, it definitely helps build good skills, commitment, dedication, endurance to stick with something and really get good at it. So a lot of great skills come from being dedicated to a sport. We have one question that came in that I'm going to read to everyone so we can get to as many of our viewers' questions as possible. So could our panelists compare the level of acceptance and also intolerance for being an out trans athlete in each of their sports? So comparing the level of acceptance versus the level of intolerance, how has that felt for y'all? How has that shown itself up for all of you? Fallon, I see you're unmuted. You want to go first?
Sure. For me, the level of acceptance and intolerance, I mean, if anyone looks up articles on myself and my career, and you'll see a lot of intolerance in the MMA community. I think a lot of this was drummed up by some media outlets, and especially our dear friend Joe Rogan, who said a bunch of transphobic stuff and about me and my career and transgender people and itself. On the other side, we have some acceptance. We have some acceptance, but not as much as I wish it could be in the MMA world. there's a lot of transphobia and a lot of intolerance going around all around. So, and a lot of intolerance from other MMA fighters, both male and female. But there are, well, on the other hand, there is some tolerance by the way of female fighters accepting fights to fight me. So I would give it, if I were to say like a percentage rate of intolerance, I would say maybe 75% intolerance, 25% tolerance on my sport. I don't know. That's just the way things are in MMA. It's a very hyper masculinized environment and very misogynistic. So that's what I find in my field.
Thank you, Fallon. Thank you. Same question, Patricio, Angela, who would y'all like to respond?
Yeah, you know, I preface this to say that my story, I'm sorry, my dog is really snoring, Meatball. So sorry if you hear rumbling, it's him in the background. My story is a little bit different than even some of the other trans men. I think there is definitely a marked difference between trans women and trans men in terms of sport. Now, I don't want to say that completely erases any sort of transphobia trans men experience, because that is definitely not the case either, but it does look different. For myself, let me go into the intolerance first and then move into the tolerance piece. I don't know how I can necessarily rate this, because I think when we look at a sport as a whole, like, are we talking about the community of the sport itself? Are we talking about the competition and the professional arena, the business angle, and then the press and the fans? I would say the fans are probably where I have definitely experienced the most transphobia, though funny enough, they love to boo when I was fighting, but when I was walking through the ring, there were crickets. No one ever says anything to my face, but they love to go online and talk smack. Normally saying things that are actually very revealing, that they know absolutely zero about the sport that I've dedicated my life to for 20 years, saying things like I am too small, as if we don't have weight classes, saying things that are just not even rooted in any sort of science, saying that my skull is too small, so that, I mean, it is small, but it's very dense, and that my skull will be cracked open. I think there's, Fallon, you've heard this statement done many times.
For sure.
Even though my bone density is a 97th percentile of males, that's definitely not an issue. The other issue for me has been finding opponents. And I think if a lot of societal pressures went off and we're more like, okay, we're going to see him as a man. We're going to let him compete. We're going to see how he does, and treat him just like any other male competitor in the sport. I would guarantee that the fear of competition would drop down, because I'm not someone in there just participating. I am a well-accomplished athlete. I was a multiple national champion, Olympic trial participant, won international fights. I'm a threat. I'm not someone that is just going to roll over no matter who goes in there with me. So I think a lot of my competitors are a little afraid of the fact that there's a big chance that they're going to lose against me. And they don't want to be the one that loses against a trans guy, because all the other people talking around them will be saying transphobic things about it. Now, if everyone just acknowledged I was a man, people would just get in there and compete against me like any other man, just like I do in sparring or any other time. And in terms of the tolerance, you know, I feel incredibly privileged and incredibly fortunate to have so many great relationships in the sport. I've been a boxer for 20 years. So many of these people have seen me grow up. They saw me 16 years old, losing my first fight in the first 30 seconds of, you know, against someone who was way older and more experienced than me, all the way up until my Olympic trials, up until seeing me having my first amateur competition as a male athlete. The strength of these relationships and the solidarity that so many boxers have. We're a really tight-knit community. I have a lot of respect. I'm back in the gym now. I spend most of my time not really having to think or navigate or talk about being trans in boxing spaces. I go in there, I work just like everyone else. you know, we joke with each other. I go in there and spar, we throw down, we hug afterwards. It's all good. Like, I'm treated just the same as anyone else. And that's because a lot of the coaches make sure their athletes and their charges treat me just like I deserve. And I treat them with respect and they treat me with respect.
I love it. Thank you. Just treating people with respect, you know, and focusing on the sport and not the drama. And so thank you for that, Patricio. Angela, same question for you.
Yeah, I think in the sports world or just life in general, there's a lot of intolerance when people lack the education, right? When they don't know any better, or when they have a lot of hate in them, right? That they feel that they're entitled to this because it's theirs and this is mine, right? But I think when it comes to sports, another thing that I've noticed playing against cis women, right, or cis men sometimes, it's like, oh, you know, oh, she's only good because she was born, you know, that, right? And it's kind of like it discredits all the work that I've put in, right? All the years that I had. I remember when I first started playing, I would play volleyball outside by myself on my roof, right? I would practice by like serving it on my roof, and like I would break things at my house, and like my parents would be upset, right? But these are hours that I put in, passing, trying to improve myself little by little. I would travel to open gyms in different parts of LA County, East LA, Newport Beach, Woodland Hills, and in just different areas. And it would always be like, you know, the stairs, folks not, especially cis men, right? But then they're the first ones to be sliding in my DMs after, right? But, you know, at first it's kind of like they're not accepting. And then I think for me, it was also like going with someone, right, as an ally to be there. But I got to the point where I just felt comfortable enough just to go along or go by myself, because I was able to build that that courage and that that courage within myself, just to be like, no, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna dominate this place. I'm gonna take up space because I deserve to be here just like everyone else. So the tolerance component of it comes in with like friends, right, who I've built relationships with since starting and since playing.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Yes, it's those relationships that we build that often help us get through the bumpy parts and can help others get to a place where they understand as well. So allies are so important throughout our lives and in this process as well. So be good allies out there. I had another question. We have some other questions that came in, but I had a question for everyone. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions about trans people in sports? Who wants to go first?
Well, the biggest misconceptions, I guess I'll start. I guess the biggest misconceptions are with transgender women that we have an unfair advantage. And there's a lot of things that people say about our bodies, like we have too dense of bones, which is a ridiculous statement. I mean, we have to think that like the difference between density between male and female is minuscule in itself. And on top of that, we can think of like your average cisgender Black woman is going to have more dense bones than your average cisgender white man. Did I say that right? Does that make sense? So like, I mean, does that mean that like Black women shouldn't like compete against cisgender women because their bones are too dense? You know, we don't do these things with in matters of race. We shouldn't do them in matters of transgender people either. We have that, and people think that transgender women are stronger than cisgender women after hormone replacement therapy and all the other stuff that's involved in it, where you have to be certified to play in your sport. And all of this is false, because once you take estrogen and testosterone suppression, your musculature is reduced, mitigating any type of unfair advantages that could possibly be. So it's just a lot of misinformation on our bodies and what we can do and what we can't do and all this stuff. On the flip side, we have trans men, but I'll let Patricio get into that one, I suppose.
Patricia, you want to jump into that?
I think I'll just take that as my segue into it. So I was able to crawl over to the unmute button. I feel like we could do a whole entire hour about the misperceptions and myths and just the lies. I think that there's people that are even, it's not about ignorance, they are straight up lying. We are in a golden age of being able to access more information than ever, and people are still consuming the same things over and over and not being critical of the information they are consuming at the same time. I think what it really highlights to me is that people, and I'm going to do this generalization of people, do not understand their own bodies. It is incredibly insulting to me as someone who used to be a high-level female athlete, that there are so many people, both women and men, even sometimes there's trans people within that are trans women and men, but cisgender men and women frequently, who automatically assume that anyone who is male assigned at birth is automatically physical superior to anyone who is female assigned at birth. Like, it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind that people don't even understand their own differences and diversities. And the fact that you would think that people who are male assigned at birth and female assigned at birth are entirely two different species. Like, male assigned at birth are like rhinoceroses in terms of strength, and female assigned at birth are like cats. It doesn't even make sense in terms of people's comparison. There's so much incredible diversity and differences between all of us. And it can't be distilled down to just the doctor said you're a boy or the doctor said you're a girl. And that is the finish of what your physical capabilities are. We're really not that different. And it really saddens me for the people who are female assigned at birth, who automatically diminish their own physical prowess just based off of these assumptions. And this is patriarchy and socialization that has been so ingrained in us that we don't even question it, right? People don't even question when someone says a trans woman is stronger than a cisgender woman. There's no even, they just go, oh, okay, that must be the case. Or they say a trans man is automatically inferior to a cisgender man. I can tell you, I've been in street brawls even prior to transitioning. I know how to fight and I'm strong. I have definitely, made people feel the weight of my punches in here, and has nothing to do with the fact of how I was born. I often, when I have public conversations, and not on Zoom, so it's a little bit more difficult, but I am curious for those who are present on this panel and listening, how many of you have had your chromosomes tested, right? People say, oh, if you're XX and XY, I don't even know what my chromosomes are. I would bet you don't even know what your chromosomes are. You're making major assumptions. If you actually go to read a little bit of the science, rather than reacting and getting angry online about something that may not even be worth wasting the energy, and spend the time actually discovering the own powers of your own body and the own diversity of humankind.
I love that. Because I absolutely agree that women, from the get-go are taught to be victims. You're not going to be safe in a bathroom. You're the weaker sex. And that's all bullshit. And so thank you for highlighting that. Angela, would you like to add anything?
Well, I was the misconception of trans athletes, right? Or from just like the public?
Yes.
Is that the question?
What do you think are the biggest misconceptions out there about trans people or TGI people in sports?
Well, I think for trans women, it's definitely that we have higher testosterone levels, as Fallon mentioned earlier, right? That somehow we're stronger. And it just brings me back to my, like, I've played against other cis women who hit harder than me, right? Who serve harder than me, who are playing Division I, and automatically I have an upper hand because I'm trans. No, it takes years of practice, right? It takes years of dedication to the sport for you to get to that point. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And I think what was previously mentioned also was that, you know, they're basing this off of what things that they read online, on Reddit threads, on, you know, are they going to school for this, right? Are they are they studying chromosomes and like sex and all these things, or are they just basing it off of what they heard, right? Because I think that's how a lot of like misconceptions get passed around. And, you know, yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Angela. And yes, you know, to your point, it's get to know a trans athlete, get to know a trans person before making all these assumptions about who we are, what we are, how we do things. Educate yourself, get to know somebody who's trans before having a final decision about what the whole community is like or what we aren't able to do, especially in sports. Deanna, I think we had some questions. Is that correct?
All right. Drian, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. The conversation was flowing. Good evening to everyone, to our panelists, and to all of our attendees. Thank you so much. And a shout out to our mayor pro temp, and our council members that were in attendance. Would you like me to read the questions, Drian, or did you? Okay, perfect. So I will read them in the order that they came in. Our first question comes in from Alana McLaughlin, and I do apologize in advance if I say anyone's name wrong. Please charge it to my head and not my heart. The question reads, the recent anti-trans legislative push in sports, has that been limited to scholastic athletes in sports, or has anyone seen anything in professional sports yet?
Good question.
Do either of our panelists
Let's
know?
see here. I'll start with that. I personally haven't seen anything in reference to professional athletes or amateur athletes in sports. From what I can determine from speaking to people in the know, right now it's all about scholastic sports. Right now, any or the what was it? Is it the NCAA or something like that? And sports connected to government entities that give them money or something like that. So yeah, I think that's all it's wrapped up in right now.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to go through the onslaught of bills that are being proposed right now. I think what they are particularly aiming for is youth. They're really just going after kids. Let's just name this. They're actually going after children. I do wonder if there will be some sort of runoff at some point within professional sports, especially as we start impacting the healthcare of trans athletes. There are definitely bills being put out for specifically limiting protections for healthcare. And I do think like those are very dangerous, especially if we are on hormones that are being regulated by the commissions in these various areas, what's going to happen. But as far as I know now, mostly they have been aiming for I would say, the most vulnerable of our populations by going for children.
Thank you. Our next question is from Eddie Goldman, and it says, can our panelists compare the level of acceptance and also intolerance for being an out trans athlete in each of their sports?
Oh, we
already asked.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. What about this one then? How do you think the presence of trans people in sports can help rethink the current sports structure and culture? Did we ask that one?
We haven't asked any.
Okay, I will say that in the clear sounding voice then. I'm so sorry. How do you think the presence of trans people in sports can help to rethink the current sports structure and culture?
Well, I think it's challenging everyone to really think about what are the divisions we're creating and are they actually relevant anymore? And I'm going to say this also for which, you know, we're not discussing specifically, and this isn't my lived experiences, but intersex athletes, Caster Semenya, for example, who is the South African sprinter. there's just so much. It is highlighting, in particular, maybe the classifications that we have been using that have always been deemed as scientific actually are really outdated. And that needs to be updating on a whole. I think it's also really highlighting, and this has been a continual issue as long as there have been women athletics, of just the hypocrisy and the lack of actual care for female athletics, whether they're trans or whether they're cisgender. For all these people that are claiming that they are doing this for girl sports, I would bet they are also the same people when you see the posts under the WNBA laughing about how they can't dunk, or saying that no one wants to pay them because no one pays for it, which is actually not even true for a fact. I would very much bet that there is a correlation between the people who are being transphobic, who are also being misogynistic. And I think this is the link actually in the sport. And what trans athletes are doing is pushing the lens of misogyny in sports, which has continually been there. I don't think it's ever gone anywhere. And that includes trans men too. We are still being under that guise, and misogyny is the reason why we're not even being thought of, right? I feel like trans boys, using that distinction very specifically, thinking about youth, trans boys aren't even coming up in this because they automatically dismiss us as not being a threat. Now, I guarantee what's going to happen with this, just like when I won my fight, before the fight, they were saying I was going to get knocked out and brutalized. When I won my fight, I was cheating. We watched this in Texas with Mac Biggs, who was a high school wrestler and was forced to wrestle girls, went undefeated, even though he was on testosterone, even though he wanted to wrestle with the boys. They were so bent on making sure of controlling this child's body that they forced him into a competition that ended up inadvertently hurting everyone involved, including the other girls in the sport. So I think what this whole picture is, and I really, really hope that other women and supporters of women and girls athletics realize that if we want there to be equity in sports, we need to make sure it includes everyone under the umbrella.
Thank you. Angela, would you like to add to that?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, Adrian.
Okay, the question was from Xperia Z5. I want to be consistent with that, so I apologize. It says, how do you think the presence of trans people in sports can help to rethink the current sports structure and culture?
So I think us just being there, right, existing and just taking up that space is already something that's challenging what we've been taught, right? I think our presence is threatening to folks, unfortunately. At least that's been my experience with playing volleyball, right? I think there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of, things that still need to be done in order for us to continue playing and, getting to that next point. But I think it's visibility, right? Visibility leads to representation, and ultimately that is what's going to change.
Our next question is from Vesper Meekin, and this question is for the pro fighters. Have either of you had situations where the cis het public tried fighting you for being such positive role models in a hyper masculinized sport?
How they tried, if the public tried fighting us? Is this physically, or are we talking?
It sounds like it's theoretical. That's a good one. Would you like me to reread it for you?
Sure, please.
Okay. Have either of you had situations when the cis het public tried fighting you for being such positive role models in a hyper masculinized sport?
For me personally, I think, yes, the cis het public has fought me publicly and privately. They come to me on my social media pages and they say a bunch of awful, horrible things. And to other pro fighters, I'm pretty sure they do the same thing to treacle also. But yeah, and pushing for, and some of the cishet public has pushed for me not to be fighting for certain organizations or promotions within the sport, try to get me banned or try to get me blocked from playing in the sport, those types of things. That's what I've come across.
Yeah, definitely no one has tried to physically fight me yet. I actually, many times people have come into my DMs threatening me, and I'm like, I mark where I train. You're more than welcome to come down. They still haven't bothered coming. I'm still waiting. I'm here. You know where I'm at. They definitely try the "you're a bad influence." Like, I suddenly am going to turn kids trans. I wish I had that power to just, snap my fingers and make people be something they're totally not, because this world would be a lot better place. I think if I had that to do it. I do want to highlight in the opposition of that, even though I do have people in my DMs and the trolls, I really just try to focus on how much affirmation I get. I work at a teen center. My gym is in a teen center in Dorothy, and I'm a coach there. And these kids don't miss a beat at all. They're not confused by me. They're not threatened by me. None of them have come to me being like, because of you, I'm going to transition now. And if anyone does come to me with that, that's because they felt safe enough to acknowledge something they've always had in their heart, not something that I made them do. All I would do is make them feel safe to really explore who they are as a person. But these kids, they're so funny. They're more interested in the fact that I have an okay social media following. They think I have clout. So that's much more interesting to them. They love when I'm on press to be like, I saw you on this and that. I saw you on the Shade Room. And I'm like, please don't read those comments. I really hope you're not reading those comments. And I've also had, in addition to that, fathers, in particular fathers, whether it has been sending me messages being like, I watched my child have the courage to go back to the sport or the event they were doing before transitioning because they saw you fight. Or I've had fathers who don't have trans children who have said they have sat down with their kid, pointed me out, and they're like, that's the guy that has sparred there before. That's a real man. He doesn't let anyone tell him who he will be. So I think there's also something about being out and being trans. It's not just about, a trans narrative or a trans agenda, or the fact that we have occupied spaces of honor within our communities for thousands of years. And it only has been under recent time, particularly under white supremacy, that we have been removed from our sacred places in this world. And I think we are regaining those purposes, and in particular, really challenging people to understand, like, you have autonomy over yourself. You have agency over yourself. We hold the mysteries that you come out this way in the world and realize, like, that's actually not who I am. I think we are actually amazing possibility models of self-determination and ultimately self-love, because for all of us that are, especially those who are able to come out, and those of us who are coming out, despite all the threats, despite all the hate, despite all the pushback, we are saying, like, I matter more than what you say about me. And that is universal across the board.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mia Fisher. It reads, anti-trans youth, athletes, and healthcare bills are currently sweeping across the country. Why do you think are Republican lawmakers using trans youth as their latest target in the culture wars? How can we mobilize against a lot of the misinformation that's circulating about the alleged advantages of trans girls and the need to protect women's sports?
All right, I'm going to jump in right in this one. They're scared. They're scared because they're losing the culture war. That is why we're having a pushback. Before, there wasn't as much going on. There were trans athletes before. There were trans people before. They're scared because they know that the tide is changing. And this isn't about necessarily protecting women's sport. It definitely is not about protecting women's sports or girl sports or protecting children. This is about removing autonomy and agency from children. because they're scared of the fact that people are standing up and speaking and being like, I get to control my body. I get to decide who I am. I get to decide how I move through this world. And this is a very powerful control mechanism to remove those agencies. And of course, they're aiming for children. That's vulnerable. It's vulnerable on multiple angles. I feel so much compassion for these kids having to navigate all this, because it does not feel good for me as an adult to have so much hate thrown at me. And I have so many solid relationships. I have a therapist, like I got my emotional support dog snoring over here, and it still hurts me. I can't imagine being 15 years old when you're raw, having someone saying like, you're not a boy, you're a girl. I don't care. You're a freak. You should go kill yourself. These terrible things that people are saying, completely removing the humanity of the fact that that is a child you are throwing those vile words at. I think it really shows the lack of humanity of the people that are pushing for this. And in particular, the way that the people who are creating these bills and pushing it into policy, and also the government officials that are backing it and also pushing it, is that they know what heartstrings to pull on. And they know that a lot of people love their kids. And they want to show we are protecting children. That is always the narrative. We are protecting girls. We are protecting children. You're not protecting, you're bullying. If you were actually protecting children, you wouldn't remove trans healthcare. Do you think trans kids aren't kids anymore? That they suddenly aren't deserving of the same rights? These bills are coming because they know that they have lost this war and they are trying to stage one last battle. And my challenge is to everyone else who is here who is not trans, what you can do is constantly push back, have the conversations. Now, you don't have to go in there immediately saying you're wrong. That doesn't work. Shame does not work as a tool of getting people to actually change. If you have relationships and you have people who are fighting it, have a real honest heart-to-heart conversation and understand that when we deny youth from being who they are, when we start shaming them and telling them how they feel is wrong, they are going to hurt themselves. 40% of trans youth attempt suicide. This is not because they're trans, it's because this world is not big enough to really see their vision for themselves. So this is a life or death issue. And this is an issue that affects all of us because we are all part of the community. You may not know a trans person right now. You will at some point, and you have no idea what someone has been hiding within them because they know it's not safe for them to really express themselves. The more we make room for everyone, the more we make room for ourselves too.
Do either Fallon or Angela, would you like to answer the question as well? No pressure though. Let me just start by saying that, no pressure. But if you would like, before I move on to the next question, if you have some thoughts you would like to add to that. Okay, and the last question that I have is from Natalie Ye. How do you all stay strong in the face of all the nastiness in media and smear campaigns? Does it distract you on the court or during your sports?
The question was how does it affect us?
Yes. How do you stay strong in the face of all the nastiness in media and smear campaigns? Does it distract you while you are?
Yeah. So it can be very distracting. I'm not going to go into too much, but even in my fights, that was distracting. I mean, having, this media attention, having to pull away from what my focus was at the time, it can be very distracting. But I suppose what I do to like counteract that is just my fan base and listening to people who are actually positive, and the friends that I have, the support that I have, and support that I have from a small amount of family that I'm still in connection with, like my daughter for one. It's good to keep yourself grounded with good people around you. Also, especially on social media, you get a bunch of like flack. So ignoring and blocking people who come across with bigoted comments, stuff like that. I mean, that can be a very distracting part. Social media is a big part of our lives today. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. Yeah, and just taking in the love from where the love is coming from and embracing that and holding on to that entirely.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, with what's currently happening with the bills that are being passed in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas, right? That we need these spaces, right? When I transitioned at the age of 20, 21, I found a safe hub at the Children's Hospital Los Angeles. I found a support group. I was able to have a doctor who was competent in trans care, who didn't make me feel uncomfortable with my body, even though I did, right? She was very affirming. Shout out to Dr. Olson from CHLA. And we need that, right? Because ultimately we want these children to thrive. We want these children to live. We want these children to succeed in whatever it is that they're doing, right? And by us, discrediting their gender or taking healthcare away or banning them from sports is a way to build camaraderie. Sports is a way to connect with people, to get to know yourself. And yet we're doing this disservice to these kids. And, here we are adults also, like at least for myself, right? In the beginning, it was difficult, right? I had to keep pushing myself to be the best version of myself, get to know myself more, surround myself with people who love me, who care about me and my well-being, right? But what I would also like to add is that I think for me, as I get older, I'm able to just like zone out the noise, right? I'm there for a reason. I'm there to play. I'm there to like kick ass, right? And I'm there to show that I've put in the work, that I'm a great athlete, right? I may not be a professional. I play recreational volleyball. I play in tournaments. I travel to different parts of the state, right? But for me, it's about challenging myself to be the best version, right? To showcase that, yeah, trans women are here and trans women will continue to be here, and we're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to exist, and that's just that's a word I like to add.
Yeah, I think boundaries, really sometimes putting up the blinders, learning to ignore the trolls, letting other people do the fight for you, having conversations with your friends and your coaches, being like, this is what I need you to do to help me stay safe and to really stay focused. I'm in a sport where people die. This is not something that I can go half-hearted into. I have to go full focus. And I'm really lucky to have like an amazing support group, whether it's my partner, my friends, my coaches, all these people, like they're the ones that are going to do the fighting for me. Sometimes they get more upset by the posts that are online than I do necessarily. But I also think it's fuel, right? Like Billie Jean King said, and I love this quote, pressure is a privilege. It gets me up at 5 a.m. and still training. It kept me focus on getting back into the ring for after 6 years. It was my motivation for the journey, that some people are like, do you want to still do this? Why would you still do this? Because I want to, and that should be enough. And all the people saying you're going to lose, you're going to do this and that, I'm like, keep bringing it to me. You're just lighting more and more fire underneath me. And my goal is to blow up as big of a torch that the whole world will see my accomplishment. So keep bringing it on.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Now that we finished the questions that I was able to respond to, there are others rolling in, and I love it. I know that we are up for time shortly. So I did kind of want to check in. Drian, did you want to keep going with the questions, or?
I think maybe we can do one more question. And I would really love to end today with recommendations from our panelists on what allies can do to support TGI athletes. I would love to hear that. I guess that's going to be how we end our panel today. So for our panelists, thank you so much for sharing your time today, your experiences today. Thank you for educating us and teaching us about how we can better support trans athletes. And to that end, I would love to hear from all of you. What do you think allies can do to make a safer space for trans athletes, to support trans athletes, to uplift and empower trans athletes? Who wants to start? Fallon, you're unmuted, so you want to go?
I'm sorry. Yes, what we can do to have people make safer spaces for trans athletes. I think give a lot of support. If you're a coach, let it be known that you support trans athletes, and maybe you like do things like put a pride sticker on your door or something like that, or a trans sticker on your door. Make people who want to train, who want to play in a sport, feel welcome in the sport. That's like one of the biggest things. And if you are a coach in a sport, like make sure that everyone else, the whole team, is supportive or of the trans athlete, and don't let transphobic stuff like slip by. And those are some major points I think that can help give a safer space for trans athletes.
Thank you, Fallon. Patricio, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm thinking more about youth, because I think this is one, it is literally causing the cultural shift. If we start with them young and having these conversations with them, this is how the next generation continues to make waves. So thinking about youth, especially as someone who's a coach, is have conversations with youth athletes around what is happening. Kids pay attention. Kids are really smart. We have a really funny ageist way of thinking that wisdom only goes one way. It doesn't. There's a lot of wisdom at all the stages of our life cycle. Have the conversations, listen to them, don't tell them, hear what they have to say. They're probably going to have questions, start answering them. Be an educator rather than necessarily someone that's telling a person this is what is right. No one likes to be told they're wrong. No one likes to be told what to think. People love to have conversation though. So really learning to have those conversations, gathering as much data as you can so that you have ammo to challenge when someone, whether a child or an adult, says something that's transphobic, then it makes it really difficult for them to even hold those views when you have information. Have it a debate. Don't have it a yelling match. Don't have it be both of you lecturing each other. Have an active conversation. And I think that's a big way to plant a seed of actually creating the change. Because I think, and I have definitely learned this in boxing, a lot of people just don't have the information. And I have been that first step of learning that sex and gender are two different things, and that there's so much variety in the world and there's so much possibility. So I would challenge everyone to be that person that starts planting seeds in everyone else around you and start really nurturing it. Have the conversations, flag that it's okay, because you never know who may be trans around you, that they can talk to you about things. Making sure to challenge and interrupt when you hear violent language of any kind, whether someone's saying racist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, whatever it is. Be that person to be like, it doesn't matter if it's a joke, it's not funny. Being able to challenge people consistently in their conversations and really ask why they're saying what they do. Before I get off, I did see a question in the Q&A box, and I think it's really important, and I personally want to finish with it. And I think the question was from Jaden Fields. Now I can't find it, but it was, as all these bills are coming out, what can you say to trans youth in this moment? And I think it's really important that we cannot lose sight that these are children that are under attack. Even as I know, like the little kid in me is feeling it now, and I'm definitely having a lot of feelings about this. But as an adult, and I feel it's my duty as someone who is now moving into a possibility model for these children, to go back and recenter them. And I really want trans youth to know that they are pushing so hard because you are so powerful. And the fact of just being who you are going to change lives. You are going to, just by knowing you, make people question and realize this world we've been lied to for a long time, that this isn't black and white, this is 3D. And there's so much more possibility in this world. So I want all trans youth to know I am here, I am fighting with you, and I will keep fighting until we have a world where being yourself isn't seen as a courageous act.
Thank you, Patricio. That's powerful. And yes, remembering that, they're attacking our kids, our youth, the most vulnerable of our community. And that's not cool. Angela, would you like to send us out today? You have final word.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Patricio mentioned earlier. I think kids are very powerful also, right? They have a lot to teach us. They have a lot ahead of themselves, right? They should, instead of like being distracted by all the noise around them, they should be focused on what they want to do in the future, right? They're the ones who are going to ultimately create these spaces for us. I mean, as I get older, right, I'm going to need those services. I'm going to need those resources. And it's our responsibility as the adult to continue this battle. And I think it's been at the forefront of like trans people's eyes, right? And it's been at the peripherals of cis folks, but now it's your responsibility to keep fighting with us, alongside us, right? Bringing us into these kind of panels, paying us for our time, right? Advocating for our rights and having those difficult conversations, having those uncomfortable conversations that you don't want to have because it's easier just to sweep it under the rug, right? Because that's what a lot of us have been taught to do. But now it's time to change that narrative and continue fighting. And to all those kids out there, I'm not sure if anyone's watching this, you are powerful, you are loved, and keep going. There's so many, we are a prime example of us living authentically, living in our truth and continuing to push and fight, right? So happy Trans Day Visibility, y'all.
And with that, we will end our panel. Thank you so much to our panelists for helping to make Transgender Day of Visibility so special and so incredible, and for educating us on this day when we have so many bills that are trying to legislate against our access to services and healthcare. So your presence today is powerful. It's needed. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And I see we have Councilmember John D'Amico. Did you want to say anything or send us off? We'd love to hear from you.
I just wanted to say what an amazing conversation, and the sort of power and willingness to sort of step right up and, say what needs to be said. And an impressive number of people are on this webinar. That's also impressive, the kind of draw you have and the kind of ways in which people flock, not just to our Trans Advisory Board, but to our city and to all of the people here. So thank you all very much. I'm sorry I had to join late. My pesky day job got in the way, but the 40 minutes, 50 minutes I saw was really terrific, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Councilmember D'Amico. And I see Mayor Horvath is here. Would you like to send us off today? We'd love to hear from you.
Saying goodbye. Y'all were amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you. So once again, thank you, everyone. You heard a call to action. It's time to get activated, to be good allies. If you are an ally listening today, become active, become vocal, help us create the kind of world we all want to live in. Thank you so much for joining us on Transgender Day of Visibility.
And for everyone, the YouTube live that has been recorded will be posted on weho.org/forward TAV as Victor, Transgender Awareness and Visibility in the next few days for anyone who would like to watch this again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hernan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was amazing.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Drian. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. This was wonderful. I had such a good time listening to all of you, and thank you for sharing, your history. And I think those are the impacts, when people hear those personal stories, that's when their hearts and minds change. So thank you so much.
Yes, and we'll talk soon. I really appreciate it.